Hello, beautiful people. Today is 19th of April. My name is Sahil, and welcome to Newspaper Analysis. Guys, Justice Chandrachud, while delivering the judgment on Sabrimala temple controversy, said that to treat women as children of a lesser god is to blink at the constitution itself. Now, friends, many a time the role of a woman is treated as subservient and secondary to the male in the society. Many a times these arguments are based on the notion of culture and continuity. Yes, I also accept this thing that many a times they are the integral part of the faith, but many a times just on the name of faith, the things are preserved as a part of a status quo. Guys, in that particular condition, it is nothing but a crime on the part of constitutional values. And yes, it is also true that it is indispensable and pertinent to preserve the cultural values also of a country. But tell me a thing, is it merely a coincidence that often the women are the ones who are the sufferers into this trade off? Guys, this particular quote you can use into your GS paper number 1 into the social issues, as well as in GS paper 2 into the questions of social justice. So guys, let's begin with today's newspaper analysis. Guys, before starting the video, I would just like to convey a thing. If you are liking our effort, if you are liking the coverage, then please subscribe to our channel and please share our videos in order to spread the novel initiative. Guys, this is a page number 1 of the Hindu newspaper, and in the first news item, we can see that the government says that now approval is necessary for the FDI investments that are coming from the neighboring nations. Now, before going into the actual news item, let's take a little bit of background. First of all, what do we understand by the FDI? So, you might be knowing that FDI stands for Foreign Direct Investment. Now, guys, let's take example. ABC is an Indian company, and some foreign company, for example, Microsoft, wants to buy some share of this ABC company. For example, they want to buy 50% share of this company. So, this when they are buying this particular share, the money will be coming into India, and that money is called as foreign direct investment. Now, one more thing, apart from FDI, there is also one more thing which is called as foreign portfolio investment, FPI. Now, what is the difference between two, that is FDI and FPI? For this particular thing, government constituted Arvind Mayaram committee which suggested the difference. And the difference is that if investment is done by buying the shares up to 10% into a company, then that thing will be called as FPI. And if investment is done for more than 10%, you buy it more than 10% of stake into a company, then that is called as FDI. So less than 10% FPI, more than 10% is FDI. One more small concept here. If any foreign investor or foreign company wants to invest into India, there are two ways. One is called as automatic way and other is called as approval route. First of all, automatic means that you need not to take permission from the government. Directly you can come, bring your money and do investment into a company. However, approval means that there are certain sectors where you cannot simply directly bring your money. You need to take the permission from the government of India. Friends, earlier there was a Foreign Investment Promotion Board, FIPB, which used to give all these approvals. But now FIPB has been abolished by the government, and now the approval will be taken from the respective ministries as well as department. In most of the cases, the automatic approval is there because government is going towards the liberalized investment policy. Now, there are sectoral caps also. For example, there are certain sectors in which the maximum investment can be brought up to 49%. For example, insurance. Then there are certain sectors where you can bring 100% of investment. For example, single brand retail. There are outlets, for example, Adidas, it is a single brand retail. So 100% ownership could be held by a foreign company. Therefore, different sectors are given different limits as how much percent of ownership could be acquired. Now, as we are going towards economic liberalization, more of FDI is allowed through the automatic route, and these limits, sectoral caps, are being progressively increased. But guys, two countries, that is Pakistan as well as Bangladesh. We have not given them the automatic route for FDI. If any investment wants to come from these two countries, they have to necessarily take the approval from the government. Now, as I told you that approval only was to be taken for Bangladesh and Pakistan, but now government has said that any entity into the country which shares the land border with India, they need to take the approval. So there are seven neighbors of India and all the investment coming from them, they have to take approval. Now, guys, this thing is particularly being done to counter China. There have been reports that as lockdown is progressing, a lot of Indian corporates, they are facing a bad fiscal condition and their valuation has gone down. And taking its advantage, Chinese wants to invest into these companies and they want to make a kind of an economic imperialism in India. So therefore, mainly to deter the Chinese investment into the Indian companies, we have done this particular thing. However, one more thing you need to keep into your mind, this restriction is only for the FDI and not for FPI. And we know that FDI will be considered when the investment is done for more than 10% of the stake. And even into the past years, the investment of Chinese is increasing in India. And it can be seen here into the table that in 2014, the investment of China stood to be 1.6 billion and now it has been increased to $8 billion into the recent years. Moreover, guys, recently the China People Bank of China had also invested into the HDFC, and now in HDFC they hold 1% of the share, but it was allowed. Why? Because number one, norms have been announced now. Earlier they were not there, they were for Pakistan and Bangladesh only. And secondly, investment made is in FPI, not in FDI. Now, as the changes have been made into the FDI policy, a question is needed to be asked that what will be the impacts onto the Indian industry. Now, this notification has a problem. First of all, it is very ambiguous and no distinction has been made with respect to greenfield and brownfield. That is where the investment is not allowed. Secondly, it has not been made any distinction whether the investment is not allowed into the listed company or unlisted company. And it has been not also been mentioned that from where the investment is not allowed, whether from financial institution it is not allowed or from venture capital it is not allowed. So it is very vaguely framed kind of notification which is not making the things more clear. And guys, one more thing comes that when there are actual unlisted companies which are not that much big and when they will need money because of the financial strain, how they will approach the investors, because if we see the present situation, then a large number of FDI is coming from China, and disqualifying China from that particular thing will be having an impact on to the unlisted companies. And if now the money will not be given, then into the long term their value will go even more lower. And then a kind of a funny thing is that a large number of investment comes from the venture capital fund. Now these venture capital fund are registered in countries such as USA. Now USA does not makes boundary with India and they will be able to freely come to India. So there will be no impact on these kind of investment, and they are the actual investments which make the major bulk of FDI. So where it should have an impact, it is not impacting there, and the vague formation will make the things more complicated. So guys, this was all about this particular news item, and now we'll move to the next item. Guys, the next news says that Delhi government will now be using the rapid antibody test kits for testing of COVID-19. Yesterday, I had already explained you that the principle of rapid antibody test is such that these tests will search whether a person has developed the antibody in their blood or not. And if there is the presence of antibody, then it means that the person had been infected by COVID 19 earlier, and in that particular response, the antibodies have been developed. Now, because there are antibodies, it can mean two things. Number one, that the person is still infected, and number two, that the person has now recovered. However, there is a limitation into the rapid antibody test because we cannot know whether the person is still infected. To ascertain that thing, we need to carry the RT-PCR test. Guys, if a person is having antibody as well as if a person is also having the symptoms of COVID-19, then a kind of a guess could be made that yes, person has been infected and still he is suffering with COVID-19. But to ascertain, to get 100% surety, RT-PCR test has to be conducted. Guys, RT-PCR tests are more expensive and more expertise are needed here. So in order to extend testing to more and more large number of people, what we are doing, we are as an stopgap arrangement also will conduct the rapid test on those population. Guys, please keep one thing into your mind. Into the rapid antibody test, blood sample are taken and it is a kind of a serological test. Whereas the RT-PCR test uses a swab from your area of your nose as well as from area of your throat. So sample here is blood and here is a swab from nose and throat. Please keep in mind. Now we don't need to see that how many number of kits are being ordered and how many are being used, because for UPSC those numbers are not important. Yesterday also I had told you that if you want to see into the detail about RT-PCR and to the rapid antibody test, you can refer the newspaper discussion of 5th of April. There I have discussed it in from the aspect of science and technology. Guys, now we'll move to the next. Guys, there's a news item on page number 4 which says that famed Agra model is losing its sheen. Friends, from here we will take the references which could be later used if you are writing any question in GS paper 2 which concerns about good governance and effective governance. Friends, what has happened? The Agra model of UP, Bhilwara model of Rajasthan and Pathanamthitta model of Kerala was into the news because they were the success stories into the containment of COVID-19. Though friends, all of them, three of them have different strategies, but their success could be contained on certain parameters. For example, Agra and Bhilwara, they successfully contained COVID because of their rigorous containment of hotspot. Guys, they made a kind of a strategy where the core center was cordoned off, completely sealed off. The nearby region was created as a buffer zone, which also had substantial restrictions. And after that, there was successful coordination between the administration, health officials, as well as between the frontline workers. And when we talk about the Pathanamthitta model, here what was done, the focus was given onto the contact tracing. A huge database of all the people who are entering into the city was made and they were tracked on to the real time basis, and all the people who were under the isolation, they were being monitored by a call center and their whereabouts are being traced. So these were the three model. Now what has happened into the news, that this Agra model is now losing its shine because of the mismanagement that is being carried by certain stakeholders. There are two important things here. First of all, the religious congregation that happened into Delhi, from there large number of people came here, which are increasing the cases. And secondly, certain private hospitals have not shared the details of certain infected people with the district authorities, due to which the cases were spiked. Now don't go into these type of things, that exactly how the cases are spiraling up. If a question comes, just remember these three cities, they are the success model. Guys, one more thing, apart from the things which I have mentioned about these three success models, there were other things which will be universal. For example, focus on to the testing, successful quarantining, then providing good health infrastructure facilities, etc. So guys, this was all about this. Now we'll move to the next item. Now friends, in this news item on the page number 5, a location has been mentioned, that is Ambukuthi Hills in Kerala. Now it was in news because recently a huge crack has been discovered onto the Ambukuthi Hills after a fire incident, and it is being speculated that the crack might have occurred due to the heavy rains which were occurred last year. Now, though these things are not that much important, but with respect to the mapping for prelims, we need to see what important things are here. Now, when we talk about Ambukuthi Hills lies in Sultan Batheri, which is one of the range into the Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary. And guys, Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary is a part of Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. So, it also happens to fall into Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. And secondly, Ambukathi Hills also have Edekal caves. They are the caves into them. And these Edekal caves have inscriptions, engravings which are from the Neolithic period. And guys, apart from these engravings, two inscriptions have also been found which mention the name of the Cheras, and the other inscription mention the name of the Kadamba king Vishnu Varma. So keep in mind, because questions like Satyamangalam forest and all these type of things, Silent Valley, and have been asked into the prelims, so could be there. Now we'll move to the next item. Now here's a news item on the page number 8 which have answered certain questions with respect to PDS and food distribution system. Guys, this particular topic will be important for your GS3. First of all, guys, according to FCI, 58.8 million ton food grains have been reserved into the FCI's godown, and the monthly requirement is 6 million ton. So, guys, there is enough quantity of food grains, and even more food grains will be procured by the state government. And FCI has allowed state government to procure as many food grains as they want to procure. Moreover, as rabi crops will be harvested, even more food grains will be coming up, so there is no shortage of food with respect to the FCI. Moreover, FCI had even said that the organizations which are directly helping the poor and needy with respect to food can directly approach FCI. For example, State Disaster Management Authority and National Disaster Management Authority, they would be given direct food allocations as per FCI. Now, an issue was there into the news that under the National Food Security Act, it was decided that 75% people into the rural areas and 50% people into the urban areas will be given subsidized food grains at the rate of rupees 3, 2, and 1. There were the provisions for both individual entitlement as well as for the household entitlements. Now, going forward, when this thing was decided, the data was used from the 2011 census, and guys, according to certain estimates, nearly 81 crore people, 81.34 crore people were eligible to get the subsidized food grains. However, as we have reached 2020, the number of beneficiaries have substantially increased, and according to certain estimates, there are now 10 crore people who are not getting food because they have not been enrolled, as the data which is being used is very old, 2011. In this particular respect, FCI says that they have not discouraged the state government to not to enroll the new people. Enrolling and identifying the beneficiaries happens to be the responsibility of state government, and if state government want, they can identify new beneficiaries, can issue them the ration cards, and the food will be provided. However, guys, there is one more side of the story. Certain activists are saying that states are given a limited allocation, and because they are given the limited allocation, the states are apprehensive to issue the new ration cards. But clearly we can see that the coordination is little bit broken here. Fine, anyhow, there was one more argument being made that the people are suffering because they are stranded in some other town and they don't have ration cards there, so they cannot access the food grains at that particular point. So what could be the solution in this particular respect? One solution could be there, that there should be the universal food allocation to everybody irrespective of their status. Now, in this particular direction, it has been said by the Ministry of Food and Public Distribution System that this particular thing will open up a Pandora box and it will not be feasible to give the food to everybody. This has been mentioned into the article. However, if this is not possible, then what could be the case? Here, we could have used the one nation, one ration card scheme if it would have been implemented successfully by everybody. Guys, under one nation, one ration card scheme, portability of ration card will be provided, and if a person is having a ration card in any part of the country, he can access food at other places. And for that particular thing, e-solutions will be used and the shops will be installed with the EPOS, that is point of sale terminals, by which they can identify the beneficiaries. However, as the scheme has not been implemented throughout the country, the problem is still persisting. So guys, these are the major things which have been answered into the article. Now we'll move to the next article. Now we'll take the news from the Science and Tech page, which mentions that IIT Bombay had developed certain IT solutions which can help into the physical distancing. So these solutions can be used as an innovative mechanism in your GS paper number 3 also. Now, two software or systems have been developed. One is the worldwide help and other is a e-token system. Now, let's take them one by one. First of all, worldwide help. Now, here a platform has been made, and this particular platform can be accessed either by a mobile app or could be accessed by a phone call. So, when a user reaches this platform, he need to input his basic information such as name, age, mobile number, etc. And then what will be happening? The system or the platform will be forwarding all the information to the relevant department or to the relevant agency. And guys, then one particular person who will be assigned the responsibility of this particular task will be calling them back and will be giving up the follow up. I will make you explain this by an help of an example. Suppose Mr. A needs some medical assistance, and now because physical distancing is to be observed, he doesn't prefers to go to the hospital. So he will be calling the worldwide help. Either he can reach by application or he will give a call here. Now worldwide help will connect to the primary care center, and here a person will be assigned who will be calling Mr. A over the phone, and they will discuss that what are the problem. If the problem is resolved on the telephone, then it is fine. Otherwise, on a specific time, Mr. A can visit the primary health care center in person and can get his problem resolved. So guys, this is the worldwide help. Now this entire system is being already being used into the Ma and Shishu Poshan, which is a helpline started by the IIT Bombay, under which the mothers are provided the breastfeeding support. So it is a kind of a call center where people call and they will get their assistance. So this kind of things could be used in our healthcare system or as well as for the basic essential services. Second one is e-token system. Guys, we can take one example. Suppose there are weekly vegetable markets. Now in weekly vegetable markets, there is a huge rush and a lot of people come. So physical distancing cannot be practiced here. Now what will happen? We can send an email to all the people into the locality, which will notify them that the vegetable market had started. And that particular email will be carrying a link, and the moment the user will click onto this link, a kind of an e-token will be generated, and this e-token will be telling them a serial number when they can reach the vegetable market to collect their vegetables. Now what will happen? It will avoid the crowding because everybody will be having a serial number, an e-token number, and a specific time will be given so that all the people doesn't come together and create a crowding. Now when this e-token will be created, deliberately only the even numbers will be selected. Why this thing will be done? Because guys, there are elderly people and other people who don't have the digital literacy, therefore they cannot use the email and the link mechanism. So they can make a physical call, and on that physical call a physical token number will be given, and this physical token will be of a variety of odd number, so that in between these people can be accommodated. So guys, this particular thing is still being used into the IIT Bhilai, where certain students have been struck, and now when they go to their canteen or to their mess, they follow this particular system and they approach there by e-token and they get their food, and at the same time there is no crowding also. So these kind of things could be used for example into the vegetable markets, as well as these kind of e-token generation system could be given to the vendors. For example, they could be given to the PDS shop operators into the locality. They can send an email and e-token will be generated, and in all this way the system can work. So guys, this could be an innovative mechanism which could be utilized. So this was all about this article. Now we'll move to the next article. Now here's a news on FAQ section of the Hindu newspaper, which makes a critical inquiry that will convalescent plasma technique will be suitable for COVID-19. First of all, earlier also we had seen convalescent plasma therapy and how it is being used into the states such as Kerala and Delhi. We'll look at briefly. First of all, when we talk about the treatment of COVID-19, world over certain things are being done. First of all, new drugs are being identified as how they can hit the structure of a virus and could helpful into the treatment. On second dimension, repurposing of existing drug is being done, where the drugs which have been seen the clinical trial, they are being used to see whether they are effective against COVID-19 or not. So guys, when we are talking about repurposing of drug, here the WHO is operating the solidarity mission, in which four medications have been identified which could be fruitful into the treatment of COVID-19. First is remdesivir, which happens to be a drug to treat Ebola. Second one is hydroxychloroquine, which is the drug to treat malaria. Then third is lopinavir and ritonavir. These drugs are used to treat the HIV/AIDS. And the fourth one is interferon beta. And guys, this particular drug could be used alone or could be used in the combination with lopinavir and ritonavir. So these are the four drugs which are being seen under the solidarity mission of WHO. Along with it, now BCG drugs which are used to treat TB are also promising that they could be fruitful against COVID-19. So this is one thing. And then we come to the convalescent plasma technique, which is also a thing. So guys, when we are talking about the treatment, all this is the spectrum of treatment. Now, when we talk about convalescent plasma therapy, what we do, we take the blood plasma from a particular person who had developed the immunity against the COVID-19. And because he had fought with COVID-19, his blood will be carrying the antibodies. Those antibodies, when will be transfused to a sick person, they will start to show impact into his body, and then he will be able to fight with the COVID-19. And exactly this entire technique is called as convalescent blood plasma transfusion, already started in Delhi as well as Kerala. However, the issues which now come are that whether it will work or not. Now guys, the effectiveness of therapy depends on certain things. First of all, the person's plasma which you are taking should carry enough number of antibodies. Suppose a person infected with the mild version of COVID-19, and if his body developed less number of antibodies, and if his plasma is being given to another person, then this less number of antibodies will not be able to show the impact in some other person's body. Moreover, the person to whom the plasma is being given, he might sometimes need antibodies, sometimes he might need the cellular immunity. Guys, what happens when the COVID-19 impacts the body, large number of infected cells are also destroyed by the natural killer cells. So therefore, cell induced immunity is also required. And sometimes a person need both, that is antibody as well as cellular immunity. So if we are giving only the antibodies by the plasma, then this particular thing will not be working here when the cellular immunity is required, and it will not be working here also where the combination of both was required. And problem does not ends here also. There is no standardized protocol as how much of the antibody will be given to a particular person. Guys, under the typical blood plasma transfusion, 800 milliliter of blood is taken from a patient over intervals and it is transfused. Now this particular quantity of blood can be sometimes much more than that a body of a receiver can accommodate. So in that particular thing, again there will be a new set of problems. Moreover, guys, right now there are no commercially available techniques by which we can measure the level of antibody, because I have told you that if less antibodies will be given, then it will be of no impact. Moreover, as there is early stages of virus, the antibody can kill. But if the antibody or the plasma is being given into the later stages to a patient, then he will not be able to eliminate the COVID 19 by the newly acquired antibodies, because they will not be effective and inflammation into the lungs have been occurred. So guys, now a lot of things into the direction of convalescent plasma technique is to be done. First of all, we need to find the way as how we can measure the quantity of antibody present into the plasma of the donor. Secondly, we also need to identify that how much of a plasma should be given to a person depending on his own immune response. Now, thirdly, what we need to do, suppose this is a person who is now the donor of the plasma. Obviously, when he was infected by COVID 19, a lot of drugs might have been given to this particular person. So, these drugs might be having some impact onto this plasma. And now, when this plasma will be given to a person who is sick, so this particular effect of drugs might be translocated to this sick person. So, we need to find out that what was the impact of these drugs onto the plasma. And in this direction, the success could be achieved only when the large number of tests are being carried on the healthy people who are carrying the antibodies, their impact on the people who had received those antibodies. And in this direction, the researches are on. Even when we talk about India, ICMR has approved Delhi and Kerala to undertake the clinical trials with respect to convalescent plasma technique, and ICMR itself is also doing research on this particular respect. So guys, this was all about this particular article. It could be usable for your GS paper 3 under the section of health or science and technological interventions in health. Now here's a news on page number 14 of the Hindu, which says that a new list of intangible cultural heritage has been prepared by Union Ministry of Culture. Now, guys, Union Ministry of Culture has started an initiative which is called as Vision 2024. And under this particular thing, India is showcasing its art and culture to the world countries. And in this particular direction, a list of intangible cultural heritage has been prepared. Now, guys, under UNESCO, an intangible list of cultural heritage is released for every country, and with respect to India, there are 13 items which have been listed into this list. But UNESCO accepts only one nomination per country per year for the World Heritage list. Now the issue comes here is this, that India's culture, diversity and arts are so rich, so diverse, that by giving space to one entry per year will not be able to justify it. Therefore, the government had prepared their own national list which contains nearly 106 items. There are certain intangible cultural heritages which have been repeated over the states as they are practiced by one or more state, and at the same time there are certain items which have been common to the whole country as well. Fine. So this particular thing will be giving India a more space to represent their intangible cultural heritage. Now, if we talk about UNESCO's list of intangible cultural heritage, there are five criterias on which the arts the arts are identified, and those five criterias are oral traditions and expressions, performing arts, social practices, ritual festivals, knowledge and practices concerning nature and universe, and traditional craftsmen. And the list which has been prepared by the Ministry of Culture has also used these five criterias. Now, apart from this particular thing, Indian Institute of Culture is also being envisaged. And guys, this will be a premier institution which will aim at training and skilling into archaeology, conservation, museology, and all these related kind of things. And in order to make this Indian Institute of Culture, an act has to be passed into the parliament, and such an institution will be given the category of Institute of National Importance. And as the Indian Institute of Culture will come into existence, the earlier existing institutes such as Institute of Archaeology, National Museum Institute, and likewise all other institutes will come under the umbrella of Indian Institute of Culture. Friends, as I was telling you that there is a representative list of intangible cultural heritage which is released by UNESCO. So that UNESCO's list contains 13 elements, and these 13 elements. Guys, you can pause here and you can see these 13 elements which are there into the UNESCO's list. Yoga, Navroz, and Kumbh Mela are the ones which have been added recently. Now, if we see the article, then in article certain things have been mentioned. For example, Manipur's rice beer has been mentioned. Tying of turbans in Rajasthan have been mentioned. After that, music of Qawwali and playing of Veena instrument has also been mentioned. Kumbh Mela and Ramlila have also been mentioned into this list. Then, the festival of Pachoti, which is celebrated in Assam at the birth of a baby, is also been mentioned. Now, here the male child is treated as Krishna, and then there are a particular oral tradition of the transgender community which is called as Kinnar Kant Geet. It have also been mentioned, and the composition of Amir Khusro, they have been mentioned. Now, when we go to Gujarat, Gujarat's Patan silk textile has been mentioned, which are decorated with geometric motifs. As I have told you earlier, also the practice of tying safa or a turban in the Rajasthan has been included, and in Jammu and Kashmir, Kalam Bhatt, it is a kind of a Sufiana music. It has been mentioned, and the Buddhist chanting of Leh and Ladakh have also been mentioned. Then there is rice beer in Manipur that we had already seen. Now, Kerala's martial art Kalaripattu has been given a place here. And after that, the practice of making design at the entrance of homes and temples, which are called as Kolam in Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu, have also been mentioned. Now, different variety of puppets have been included. For example, Chamad Chaya Buhalya, it is in Maharashtra. Then there is a Tolu Bamalatta, it is in Andhra Pradesh, along with Tamil Nadu. And then there is a Togalu Gombetta, it is in Karnataka, Tolpava Kuttu in Kerala, and Ravan Chaya in Odisha. So these are certain which have been mentioned. Guys, I know that it could be little bit tricky and little bit different to remember these, but please pause your screen and just give 1 minute. You will remember, they are very easy. So guys, this was all about today's article. I hope you are liking our video.